agenda. I am going to go through a few oldies but goodies.
I thought that was a reference to you. Oh, new and cool.
New and cool, yeah. So what I wanted to make sure that those of you who aren't on 2013, which is probably most of you, still have something to take away. So, and looking for some tips, I've trawled right back through to version 3.01 or something like that. But I've generally picked on things that still apply to the later versions. And of course we'll get on to some of the new and cool tricks in 2013. So my name's Alan Whitton, I'm based in Wellington. I've been a NAV consultant for a bit over 10 years now. And I started way back version 3.1 or 3.10 or something. So, oldies but goodies, it's always been there, and you've possibly forgotten about some of these things. The first one, this does only apply to the older versions. If you've got an older version, you've got a lot of data in there, and you're filtering, and you get that counter that's counting the records while you're filtering, and it's slow. The way around it is to, before you filter, apply a sort to your data, which has got the field that you're filtering on in it, and you'll find it'll run much faster. I see some nodding, which is someone already knows that. Faster ways to enter dates. Now, this is NAV 101. I was at an upgrade client last week, sitting with a finance person, and they typed in a date, day/month/year. You know, and that's just silliness. We all know that if you just type in T, you get today's date. W, you get your work date. You can type in the date without the slashes. So the example there, 2010-13. If you just put 2010, it'll interpret that as day, month, and get the year from your work date. If you just put in a 20, it'll interpret that as the day and get the month and the year from your work date. And if you're filtering, say, your chart of accounts list, applying a date filter, instead of typing in a date range, you can just enter something like P1, and it'll look at your accounting calendar and grab the date range for period 1.
You did tell us that when you went into the system.
Yeah, well, the problem is that people change jobs, and maybe these simple messages don't get passed on to the new person.
I didn't know most of those.
Oh, great, I'm pleased to have helped. Well, Simon said there would be a takeaway for everyone. So did you miss out on the drink bottle?
I grabbed one of those. But I've learned something.
Okay, and again, for these older versions where you've got the classic card screens, you can filter from the card screen. You don't have to go to the list screen to apply your filter. So just click into the field you want to filter on, click on your normal filter button, enter your filter, and then you'll get the first record that matches your filter will be returned. The zoom function. I've been to lots of places where it's been, the security setup has had this cleared out, so people haven't been able to zoom. So zoom is, you're on a record, you might be on a card type screen, on an invoice header or whatever that is. And if you want to see all of the fields relating to that record, not just the ones that are displayed on the form, Control F8 in the older versions, and that will give you the full list of all of the fields. Payment terms formulas. So I've been working on an upgrade, and I was looking at this client's current payment terms, and there were over 5 or more years in this client's case. They've built up over time a set of payment terms, and I found there were things that said end of the current month, but then the formula reflected something completely different. So they've obviously lost track of how this works. So a few examples there. The 20D means plus 20 days. D20, so that's around the other way, will go to the next 20th. So in my second column there, if I was basing it on 16th of October as the start date, if I put D20, it would go to the 20th of October. CM goes to the end of the current month. CM plus 20D go to the end of the current month, and then add on another 20 days. So that's your typical 20th of month following. And then you can use a W to represent weeks as well.
That's based on due date.
Yeah, well, this is based on document date to calculate the due date. A feature that I probably haven't seen used, but it's always been there. Sorry, that screenshot's not very clear, but on a GL account, there's a field there called reconciliation account. If you tick that, then when you post a journal, prior to posting a journal to that account, if you run the test report, it will tell you what the impact on that account balance is going to be. This is probably for version 4 and 5. In fact, that's what I've written there. As you move around the form, so if you're in one form and you click on a sub menu that will drill down and it takes you to another form, the menu can be jumping around to reflect the current form that you've gone to. But then you want to go back to where you started in the menu. So you can stop that menu jumping around by right-clicking sort of up on whatever's on the very top menu, financial management in this case, choose navigation options and untick this track active windows. Remember the copy document function if you're creating the same documents repeatedly. For example, if you're creating a sales invoice and you're doing the same one each month, or the same set of items, you can use the copy document. So you can copy either another unposted document or copy a posted. You could copy a posted invoice onto a credit memo. If you do that, it will also fill out the application information on that credit memo for you. Finding manual entries in a control account. So if you've got direct posting equals no because it's a control account, and you've maybe for a period of time you had it set to yes. So people could be coding expenses directly to the AR control account or something, and you've discovered that it's out of balance with the subledger. All you have to do to find those entries is in the filter in the GL entries for for the account that you're looking at. System created entry equals no. So whenever the system creates a GL entry to a control account, this field is set to yes. A manual one will be set to no. Remember the basic calculations that you can perform in amount fields. So you've got addition, subtraction, multiplication and division. So if you were converting a value from inclusive of GST to exclusive, you could type in 115 being the amount, inclusive amount times 20 divided by your 23. And then type that into the field, and when you tab off it, it'll show you the resulting value. It won't remember the formula, it's just going to remember the resulting value. Creating a journal that calculates GST. So on the when you go into a journal and you select a batch, you will notice that if I can find this column here on the batch setup, copy GST setup to journal lines. So if you've got your normal journals and you don't want anything to do with GST, make sure that that is not ticked. But if you do want to calculate GST on a journal, have a batch there which is ticked, and what it will do is as you enter your lines, it'll copy these fields in from the account that you've entered. Now those are the three fields that are used in the GST calculation. If you have those fields, and you can edit them as well, the amount you enter needs to be inclusive of GST, and the system will use those posting groups to work out and calculate and populate the GST amount field. So only the net of the two will go to the expense account, 15 will go to the GST account, and 115 to whatever the other side of the entry is. That bottom screenshot is just the resulting. So when you're posting with GST, you not only get your GL entries, you get the GST ledger entries, and it's the GST ledger which is used by the GST settlement process. So on a GST ledger entry, you get both the base amount and the GST amount. And if you think about it, they're the two amounts that are used in calculating a GST return. Semi-related to this is this general posting type error. It seems to be a circular error that people nodding. It's sort of a circular error you can get into when entering a journal. And it relates to those three GST accounts again. They work together. If you've got one of them filled out, you need to have them all filled out, unless you've set up a blank being a valid value for one of those, which I probably wouldn't recommend. So in this scenario, if I had a journal batch and I did not have the GST setup thing ticked, it wouldn't populate those. But if you get yourself into this situation, the way to get out of it, if you don't want GST calculated, just clear the three fields and you're away. Account schedule row naming. So I saw this at a client and I thought, oh, that's a good idea. Your row numbers don't have to be unique. So, in an account schedule, you might have R1, R2 for your rows, and then you've got a subtotal R1 to R3, something like that. Another way of doing it, I'm not saying it's better or worse, but this works, is on a number of rows, I've numbered my rows all with the same word in this instance, assets. And then when I'm doing my subtotal here, I'm just saying, give me all of the ones that have assets. So I didn't have to go R1 plus R2 and so on. Might be appropriate for some reports to make it a little bit easier. Column layouts for all months in the current year. I have had this come up, not recently. I thought I'd share it anyway. So if you want to have a report which is going to list all of your months, but each month when you run it, you're going to be entering a different date because you're going to be putting in the current month range. So the way to ensure that all still works is the formula I've got there on the left. In the comparison period formula column, I've got FY, which means fiscal year, and then in square brackets, I've got the period number. So FY square bracket 1 will give me the first period in the year that date range belongs to, and so on through all of the months. Putting a vendor entry on hold. Hopefully we all know about doing this. All you have to do is there's an on hold field on the vendor ledger entry, type anything in there and that will stop it from being selected for payment. The normal approach is to put your initials or have a code for representing the reason for putting it on hold. It's only 3 characters, I think. The other thing you can change on the vendor ledger entry is the due date if you need to. Incidentally, on the, of course, if you're on 2013, and I'll show you a screenshot later, if you do put things on hold like this, you could have a filtered view of all of the ones on hold. So right on your home page, you could have effectively have a menu item which says show me all the ones on hold, so easy to keep track of them. Prices including GST. So I would normally recommend that when we're setting up our vendors, we set them all up to be either enter on an inclusive basis or exclusive basis, so that the data entry people don't have to interpret, when they get an invoice, which one am I going to do? They know it's always exclusive, say, but they also know that in that field, that prices including GST will default from the vendor record onto the invoice, and they can edit it on a case-by-case basis when they go to do the data entry. So here, I don't know if you can see my screenshot very well, but because that is ticked, prices including GST, as it's ticked, it dynamically changes the heading of the columns here, direct unit cost including. If that was unticked, it would say excluding. And then the system looks after the GST calculation from there. Remember that we can point combinations of users and reports to different printers. So if we have a printer that's permanently got our purchase order stationery on it or our sales invoice stationery on it, we can configure this. This still applies in current versions. So in my examples there, I've got Alan, user Alan, when he prints a sales invoice, it goes to one printer. When Alan prints a sales order, it goes to another printer. And when Craig prints a sales invoice, it goes to yet another one.
Quick question on the GST, when you elect to include,
Yep.
you've got something that changes all vendor cards, if you decide to tick them all, change your decision to include GST when you're entering?
A way of doing that.
Yeah, so you don't have to go
Yes.
through and tick each individual one?
Yep. It's called a configuration package,
Okay.
which
It's
I'll
better than what we
talk
do.
about later.
Cool.
So that's my older stuff. Most of my screenshots now will be from a 2013 system, but will apply. A lot of them will apply to 2009 as well. So the first one, changing the default filter field for data entry. So that's a purchase invoice there, and I'm in the vendor number field. When I drill down on that, it wants to filter on that first column with the vendor number. If I want it to automatically filter for one of the other columns and remember it for next time I go to use that field on another transaction, what I do is I just go arrow down to get into the lookup, and then move arrow across, and it will, that funnel that's circled here will move across, and that's indicating which of those columns it's going to filter on if you started typing in the number field up here. Whoop. So to save that setting, you just click on the Save as Default Filter column. So, and then you're left with, I've typed in a P on my vendor number field, but it's filtered my vendors based on starting with a P, the name. Best feature since sliced bread, I think, is the menu search. 2009 SP1, I think, that came in. Top right, I think Craig might have used it earlier on. often the fastest way, if there's a screen you don't go to a lot, so doesn't really warrant being on your home page, you can just start typing it, the name of it up in the corner there, and it will filter your list of options with all screens and menus that contain that screen. Then you can either just click on the screen name to open the screen, or click on the menu path, which I've also highlighted there, and that will take you to that menu. Sharing data with a non-NAV user, so someone who doesn't have access to the system. We have this, risk of changing slides again, this button here, the top one circled, that gives you the menu below, and you've got option print and send, and then you can choose email as attachment, and that will open up your mail with a mail all ready to go with a HTML attachment of the data that's on that screen. But probably the better option is choose the Excel, then save your file and email it, because it just gives it in a format that people are more used to. Creating a link to a page and sending it to another user. So again, using that same menu option, you've got page, copy link to page, and then you can go into a Word document or an email and just go paste, and that will be a link to that page that you started from, if they're a NAV user. Keyboard shortcuts, I've got a whole lot here, and I'm only claiming one of the 45 for these. But the tip is, when I thought, I'll look up and I'll present to you a whole lot of the shortcuts, I went into the help and I typed in hotkeys and got nothing. I tried function keys and I got nothing. So the tip is, go into your help and search for keyboard shortcuts, and you will get 3 screens worth. So there's a lot of things. I just highlighted a few of the more common ones. F4 for the lookup, F5 to refresh, F8 copy from above. So these slides will be available to you later on. So we certainly don't intend to go through all of these. Okay, so there's 3 screens of them anyway. Okay, on your role centre, you have a ribbon at the top for reports. So that'll have a number of reports in there for standard. If there's a report that you run frequently, just right-click on it and on the menu. So in this case, I've gone to the job analysis report. So I've navigated to the jobs menu and then gone down to the reports section. But if I right-click on that, I get the option add to reports on role centre. Role centre ribbon. And that will put it on your home page as a button. I'll claim this one as well. Same thing for a list screen. So I've gone through the menus and I've gone to my jobs area again, and there's the jobs list screen. Right click on that, add to navigation pane, and that will put it on the menu on the left hand side, so it's directly there every time you log in, if that's a place that you go frequently. So these are all individual user customizations. An administrator can log on as a role administrator and perform all of these things on behalf of other users. And then the users' changes get added on top of that. How many are we up to?
25.
Oh, are you counting?
I thought it was about 67.
That exciting.
You're going well.
Okay. Okay, saving filtered lists to your role centre. So, and this is really good. So if I've got the customer list on my screen, and maybe I filter it for all of those with a balance. What I can do, having done that, I can click on that customers button, which appears at the top of the filter area, that one there, and I've got an option there, Save View As. Get this sort of pop-up window. I can give it a name and let it go to the home page. And what I'll get is here, so on my role centre, my menu items on my role centre, I've got my customers, and then indented under there, I've got customers with a balance. So from my home screen, I can immediately click on that and see all of my customers that have a balance, or if I did that vendors on hold one I talked about before, I can get a list of all of the vendor transactions on hold, or anything I want. So we've got the menu, the menu search I talked about earlier. Now we know we've got sort of our menu down the left-hand side, but you'll notice as you move around in the system, it's along the top in the address bar, if you like. It's got the path that you've gone through to get to where you are. You can actually drill down on those path items and select something else from any part of that path. There's lots of ways of finding your way around the system, including on the left-hand side there, the forward and back buttons, like you used to when you're on the interweb. And also next to those buttons, there's a little down arrow there, and that's a history of where you've been, so you can choose one of those items as well. This is another quite good one. In the olden days, if you had a test system and a live system, you made a big menu item on your test system and made it a different colour so that a user knew if they were in the test or the live system. Now we have the option of displaying the company, the database and the server up in the corner. And you can choose from a variety of different colours. So in the test system, you can go and make that blue, and in the live system, make it red or whatever. So you can have a whole lot of different ones. I think there's 10 different ways that can be formatted. Filter to this value. So in any list of records, right-click on any value, filter to this value, and it will immediately filter the list to that value. The notes. So on any record, you can add notes. When you add notes, you've got the option on that yellow one. At the bottom there, you can send that note to another user and tick on the notify, and that will appear if they've got the My Notifications pane showing on their home screen. It will appear as a row in there, and they can click on the page ID. They can read the note and they can click on the page ID and it will take them straight there. We now sort of have the ability to copy and paste journal lines from Excel. So I've got I took a bit of a shortcut. I entered a journal and then I exported it to Excel, cleared my journal. And then I did a copy and paste rows, and it puts them in. But you do need, it's not remembering the column names, it's just remembering the sequence. So you need to have your columns set up in the same sequence as you've got on your journal screen. I'm not sure if this one came in 2013 or 2009, but one click to go into a field and put it in edit mode. And the trick there is you actually click, your one click on the field name, and that will highlight the field, or put you in the field and put it into edit mode. This one has been there for quite a while as well, I think. Using templates when manually creating a master file. So if I'm creating a customer, in this case, I enter the name and address information, and then I've got an apply template button, and in my template I've got a number of options which I've pre-configured with some of the fields, like all of the posting groups. So I might have a foreign customer template which I've got a different customer posting group, and general business posting group, and GST business posting group. So it sort of takes some of that guesswork away from the people creating the master files.
Can I add a caveat to that one? The users in our case did that after they'd set up and used the master data elements and managed, because there's no validation on it, to change products from lock control to non-lock control to even window and vice versa.
Okay.
Or stand cost to actual cost in window.
Okay, so just note that one as a lesson learnt, and that's an extra one for your counter.
Can you attach dimensions to those templates?
Ooh, I would have to check.
It's single table only. So
Okay.
for an item setup, we can't do the units of measure either.
So a single table. It might be different now.
That would be good.
We'll have to check that one for you. Tabbing control on data entry. So we know that in 2009 and 2013 we can show and hide some of the fields on like a card type screen, so like on a purchase header, you know, with that show more fields option. But what we can also do is, and what it will do as you do your data entry, every time you press tab it will just sequentially go through all of those fields. But what we now have is this quick entry option, and the effect of that is if you untick that for the ones that you don't want to tab through on data entry. So when I go to, say, enter my purchase invoice header, if I press tab it will still tab through all of the fields. But if instead I press enter to move through the fields, it will only stop on the ones that are ticked. You've probably seen on a number of my screenshots, we can now do the freeze panes on the list screens. So it's just in the place where you go to decide which columns you want to show and the order. Add freeze pane option there. Skype Integration. Keys was talking about this. What was it? Microsoft was the biggest phone company in the world earlier on. On a customer card or a vendor card, in the phone number field you can put a Skype username. And then if you click on the little button next to the username, it will, if you've got Skype turned on, it will place the call. Maps integration. So again, I'm on a customer card there, and I've got a button there to show online map, and what that's doing is grabbing the customer address details and then using an online map provider to find, you can choose to get directions to that customer or just show them that's where my house is, if anybody's interested. Oh, these screens, I'm giving out these slides, aren't I?
We're all
This is Craig's house. Okay, in those of you using the classic client or older, you used to be able to click in the top right of top left of a list screen and highlight all the rows and then copy them to Excel or whatever. That disappeared in 2009. It's back.
There's no limit on the number of rows.
It'll highlight them all, but there are settings around how many rows it'll go to Excel.
I think it's a copy and paste or send to Excel.
Standard Windows feature, I think this is Windows 7, to show hotkeys when you're in Office. So F10, what F10 will do is you'll see where I've highlighted the first ones. On that ribbon, I've got a Home, and Actions, and Navigate, and Report menu options along the top, and it's just put in what the hotkeys are, and then if I use Shift and the letter that's there, it'll open up that menu and take me down to the next level, and it's got all the hotkeys from there, just like Office. I didn't even know you could do that in Office until I started studying for this.
We've got to own up.
Okay, data ports have gone in 2013, and I know they're dear to the hearts of many. There is a better tool has become available called the configuration packages, and it lets me perform similar functions as the data ports, but it also, as you can see there, I've got a list of all of the tables, and then I can configure which fields in those tables I'm interested in exporting or importing. So effectively, like you might be setting up a data port. While I'm there, because we don't have Object Designer available to the users, and those of you who like to go and look at the table data, from that same place, on those tables I've got listed, I've got a number of database records, and I can click on that and see them all. So I've still got the ability to do that, to see all of my records. When I'm importing using this tool, first of all the data gets imported to a staging area, and then it gets validated, and I can see all of the errors and fix them before I try and apply that to the database. So it's not the old story of hitting the first error and then having to start again all the time until you get to the next error. You import all of your records into this the staging area that this tool uses, look at all of your errors, fix them, and then apply the data. And when I am importing using this tool, I can apply some of those master data templates to the data on the way through. So I've got a row there, it's a vendor table, and I've got one of my vendor master data templates containing some of those posting groups. Then within that template is what I'm showing here. I've got a whole lot of fields that will default, and I can make a field mandatory. So like if I'm importing to the vendor, I've ticked the name there.
Is it going to validate column?
Oh, they're all, everything. Oh, to trigger extra stuff.
Trigger validation.
That is, yeah, when I define which fields, I've got a validate option. First time I go onto a new NAV company or database, First thing I do is change all of my row headings, column headings to be 3 high and apply them to all screens. So I don't have to bother doing it every time I go to a new screen. Limiting people's access to a single company or a set of companies. This is a new user setup card, and down where I set up the give them the permissions, I can give permissions just for a single company. Other companies that they don't have permissions to won't even appear in their company drop-down list.
That also can work with the older versions, can
Yes.
it? Yep.
What am I up to?
The auditors here.
Walking in, I thought I was on 44. So that's, Michelle gave me the 45th one. Okay, test. Nothing to do with what I've talked about. What version is that? So we've got a 3.1 somewhere?
3.1 through 3.6.
It looks awfully like.
This is the, just as I show you some other ones, just note the chart of accounts screen. 3.01. It's hard to tell between some of them, must admit. Here's another one.
3.78.
Yes. Same chart of accounts screen. 3.7. Well done. Last one.
209.
Same chart of accounts screen anyway. And I pointed that out to Craig earlier on, that look at the chart of accounts screen, it's always the same, and he said, a good chart of accounts screen, why change it? 5. But I don't know if there are any pointers there to distinguish it between 4 and 5. So that was a tough one. And that's the lots.